I want that far, far away.
Yeah, I know. Sort of right in your face.
Good evening, everyone. I am Christy Moody, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Houston Planning and Zoning Commission for September 25th, 2024. Hereby call to order. Note for the record, all planning commissioners are present. We also have in the audience Madam Mayor Martin, Dave Brown, and Christina Brown, and Ben from the newspaper. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd like to take this time for a moment of silence for individual prayer and self-reflection. First item for approval is the minutes from the August 28th, 2024 meeting. The minutes have been sent out in advance, and a copy are in front of you. Is there any call for any deletions, corrections, or changes?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Hearing none, make a motion to approve. All in favor? Any opposed? Minutes approved. I don't think we had anybody signed up for any public comment since there's no public here. All right. There's no old business, so we'll go right into new business. I will open up the public meeting on item number, ordinance number TA 2024-06. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Jerry White, our planning manager, to read the motion or read the ordinance and give us a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is ordinance TA 2024-06, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance Section 4.14 Mixed-Use District, Table 4.3, to amend daycare center permissions in the MU Mixed-Use Zoning District. In other words, to make it a permitted use rather than a prohibited use. This ordinance was prepared based on a request of an applicant, and you have a letter in your package there. It's from Mr. Patel, owner of property, and they basically they're allowed to initiate a request to change the zoning ordinance if they own property in the city. And they do. The applicant owns property in the city, and once the piece of property up by in Creekside Village, the commercial area, they want to, part of that is zone MU, the commercial area, and it does not currently allow a daycare center. They want to put a daycare center there. Also, we received a letter from the president of the Homeowners Association for Creekside Village, which wholeheartedly supports the application. They believe that a daycare center will be good for that neighborhood. It'll be close to and serve several households in that subdivision. So the staff recommendation is for approval. It's a very simple amendment, one that changes daycare center from prohibited to permitted. I'll answer any questions you have.
Hey, Jerry, I have a question. Can you please define for me so I'm not confused? I see, I'm looking at table 4.3, and it's got permitted, conditional use, and prohibited. Can you define to me the conditional use? I couldn't find a definition as it applies to zoning. I want to make sure I have a firm understanding.
Yeah, it should be in the definitions, but a conditional use is something that would, it's not allowed outright, but it's believed to be appropriate and compatible in certain instances. And so it's like, we don't want to allow it outright permitted, but we think it's appropriate on a case-by-case basis. We will look at it through a public hearing process. So a conditional use is equivalent, the procedures are the same as a zoning, really, where you file an application, you have public hearings before the planning commission and the city council, and then the city council can vote it in or vote it down. And so that's the difference. It's not permitted outright. You have to file an application, go through the procedures, just like a zoning.
Are you asking for, would they be asking for a variance under the conditional use? Is that
No,
how-
it's not a variance. It's in some sense, it's kind of like a variance, and because it's based on an objective analysis of whether that's appropriate or not. It's not a whole lot of discretion involved in it, but it's not a variance. It's a separate conditional use process.
The way I read this was they're asking for a global change in the mixed-use areas to allow child care centers.
That's correct. And globally means anywhere that there might be an MU
Right.
zoning district now or in the future.
So when I look at the mixed-use areas on this map, almost all of them are on small, old neighborhood streets. And my concern is we have, and I hate to beat up on this study again, this Brazelton-Houston mobility study. They put on 53, 600 cars northbound and 360 southbound. Unfortunately, I've got an old traffic study from August of 2021, which was in the middle of the stay-at-home from work pandemic stuff. And the numbers back then were 636 northbound and 366 southbound in 1 hour at peak travel time. My concern is that making child care centers, as much as we need them in the county and around here, allowing that in mixed use and having that many people turn left on 53 at the peak travel time, because my understanding this is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 240 to 250 kids.
Yeah, I don't have details on what they've proposed yet, but that's
I
probably
heard that
right.
from somebody really, really close to the thing.
Okay.
So you're going to have 200 to 250 cars either turning left into there or coming out of there and turning left onto 53 with no traffic mitigation whatsoever. And according to GDOT, the closest intersection to there is a grade F already and was recommended for a traffic signal. So I'm just bringing that up as, I've got 2 points. One, why can't they just ask to rezone that piece of property to what they want to use it for instead of a global change? And then number 2, what's the plan to get people in and out of there safely? Because if you've got 1,000 people an hour using that road right in front of that child care center, how are we going to moderate traffic?
And I'd like to dissect on that just a little bit more. And I think both the adult daycare and the child care are needed. I absolutely think they both are. And I'm looking at the HOA letter, and I am looking at what's being proposed. The HOA letter is saying they're supportive of an upscale adult care center. And when I drive into Winder, there's that little adult care center, and it looks like a rundown motel. Magnolia. And it's like, no, I certainly don't want a facility like that in our city. That's just me personally, but I believe there's, an upscale one would be nice. So I'm in favor of that, absolutely. My concern with the child care center was last week I went to the Ace Hardware in Brazelton on 211, and I can't think of the cross street there. and I just happened to go there around 3:30, and I did not realize there's a daycare center right next to there, and the traffic was backed up on the road, people waiting to get in. And the one thing I have learned in the year and a half I've lived in here is the citizens of this community are so concerned about traffic. We have to be very, very cautious about anything we do that'll put any additional traffic on 53. And for me, giving it just a global approval is scary. I'd rather have a developer come in here and say, I want a child care center, and here's how I'm going to mitigate the traffic. I'm going to have, 300 feet of car lane space and then off the highway, and it's going to be only coming in one way and out another way. But I have severe reservations of doing a global approval. And if I'm missing something, Jerry, please let me know.
Well, let me just say this on a couple of things about it. We have had a bad experience with daycare center, this one right down the street here. Before they bought the property in the back and put a road, a driveway around it, they were backing up into the street, and people trying to get into there at the time that in the morning when you deliver students to go to the daycare center, they were backing up. Something terrible in the city, in fact, had to, or maybe didn't have to, but did let them use the depot parking lot for that. So they were wrapping around the whole thing was they were using their decel lane and using the depot property to get in and out of there. And so there's no question that daycare centers will generate traffic. Now, here's one way of looking at it, though. It's fair to say, well, yeah, we're worried about the traffic impacts. Well, if you did nothing, there's a whole bunch of uses that could go on this site that would have as much traffic, if not maybe more traffic. I mean, a sit-down restaurant or, not to compare different land uses, but the fact is that uses are permitted there which will generate traffic, and they could go in there without any sort of mitigation of traffic to begin with. So unless you think a daycare center is so different than other commercial uses permitted in that MU district, then there's not really a reason to treat it differently.
I would think that the difference would be, in my simple mind, is that you have peak periods. You have drop-off, say, between 7:30 and 8 o'clock when people are trying to get to 85, and then, in the afternoon at 3 to 3:30, where you're already competing with the school buses that are doing their normal routes, and that. So I think that's what I would point out. With a restaurant, if traffic is coming at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I think that's a little bit different, and you don't have the morning traffic normally. But that would be my concern. I just have real reservations about a global approval.
Yeah, and I appreciate, I'm assuming this is in lieu of a car wash with jet engine noise going on. No, this is different?
This is next to the car wash.
So here's my thing. I don't get out much. I stay at home. So the few times that I get out, I notice the way things are. I notice when 20 or 30 cars start stacking up on Peachtree Road, and I watch the risk that people take to pull out of Peachtree Road onto 53. As a person who used to sell cervical trauma devices and cervical implants, that made me a lot of money. I don't mind telling you. But on this front, it scares me that the city of Houston would knowingly approve something that's going to have people stacking up on 53 more than they already are, creating, I just roughly estimated that, let's say 170 of the cars that are going to be dropping kids off there are coming from Twin Lakes and the townhomes over here on Town Center. And it takes them 20 to 30 seconds to get an opening to shoot across 53. 20 seconds times 170 is how many minutes? Now people that come out of Twin Lakes or Quest Winds trying to get to 85 you're talking about maybe 15 to 30 minutes added to their commute. I mean, I'm just,
Well, go-
maybe I'm thinking too much, but every time a person
it's
turns
all
left,
fair. It's all fair to ask. Now,
There's
what
a
I hear
risk
you,
of a
what I hear
T-bone
you
collision.
saying then maybe is, you might prefer either to recommend denial of it as a permitted use, or another option, and I'm not necessarily recommending it, but it's an option, is make it a conditional use rather than a permitted use. That way,
I agree with that.
they're not prohibited. They have a buyer to establish one there, but it would be, rather than be prohibited, they would be able to file a, request to do a conditional use on it, and then they would file a plan, and then the questions you have about how many people there are, what is the impact,
Yes,
all of those questions are then fairly addressed, requested, addressed, asked about, et cetera.
and I'm gonna point to the one good thing I like about this study. $361,000 will put a red light at Jefferson Street and 53. And then
Also,
have them
sorry.
access Jefferson Street as an entrance or egress from that property and put a red light in at 53 and Jefferson Street,
Jefferson
right in
Street?
front of Delaprair's house.
My comment would be, there's nothing more important than daycare for the growth and what's coming. And a conditional is seems to me much more logical solution to this. But traffic on 53 is gonna get bad no matter what. And there's no getting around it. So that's gonna be something that has to be faced. Having kids moving in and out maybe will, expedite it a little bit or make it more urgent and for all that to be done. And as far as Peachtree, once the light goes in at the main entrance of Crestwind, and that should be eased automatically. I'm going that way now myself. It's just safer and faster, and I'm at that end. So I don't think there's anything more important than daycare, and conditional would be would be the right thing.
So do we need to deny this, or do we need to substitute, or just make a motion that we substitute conditional use instead of permitting?
Exactly. You can make a motion that you would, recommend that recommend an amendment where this daycare center, et cetera, is a conditional rather than a permitted
Okay,
use.
then I
And with
will,
traffic mitigation. There has to be
Well, by
some-
virtue of
the
filing a
conditional use will take care of
permit,
that itself, because
you
for a
have to
conditional
address,
use,
yeah.
they're gonna have to come in and present, basically their plan before this body. And then we would say, we recommend this based on what you've presented to us, or no, we want you to go do this, this, and this.
That's right.
Okay.
By virtue of the application itself, they're gonna be required to, we all require,
Because this wasn't the
analysis.
application, this was just trying to change a global mixed-use permission.
Correct.
Okay.
So I will make a motion.
Well, before we go on,
Okay.
if I could go back to the table 4-3 on page 2, I'm still concerned on the daycare for adults.
Serving, I'm trying to picture in my mind what that would look like if the max is 18 adults.
It still would be a conditional use, meaning
But we're
they
not
would
gonna
have,
change that.
have to present a plan as to what they're going to, what they propose, and it would have to come before here. It just says that it's a possibility.
No, I got that part. I'm
Okay.
just concerned about why is it, I'm trying to understand why they're limiting it to 18. And, because versus what, trying to keep in mind what the citizens on the HOA are looking for an upscale facility. In my mind, I just think of that Magnolia on the way into Winder.
I'd like to
It may
speak
be
to
a
that,
regulation thing.
just
I-
from someone who's been in many of those homes over the last couple of
Oh.
months.
I don't know.
Probably limiting to 18 because of the amount of land that's available.
Like, for instance, for every child, you gotta have 35 square feet in the daycare center.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include hallways, bathrooms, office space, or food prep areas. That's just rooms that they're gonna be in. So
Right.
that building's gonna be close to 10,000 square feet there.
Plus kitchen and everything else, you're probably looking at 12, 15.
Mm-hmm.
The uses here, unless I'm missing something, the uses here already are, that's not what they're proposing. The use is already existing.
No.
No?
No.
Okay, so.
No, there's nothing on the proppy. They wanna
No,
build it.
I'm talking under table 4-3 here, where it says daycare, including group daycare home, basic home daycare,
Yeah.
no serving more than 18 adults.
The use is already there.
The use is
Yeah,
already
in
there.
the- In the table.
Okay,
It's
so
there.
I see what you were saying, Ace, but.
Yeah.
So it's not the use that we're talking about, it's whether or not we're adding this use in here, so.
Okay. As long as they gotta come back, I'm good then.
Globally,
Okay? So,
or just in this property?
I'm sorry.
Globally? Do we change this globally?
Anything you're doing here is globally. It's gonna
Yeah.
apply to any MU district. Now, just to back up a minute, show me the map again you were looking at. Is that zoning map or is it the future lanes map?
Future land.
Future land.
Okay, well, that,
That doesn't tell us what mixed use.
no, it's only, I got you.
This pink is all what
Yeah.
you've got.
That's a mixed-use category, but that's not the same thing as the MU zoning district. The only MU zoning district we have in the city is Creekside Village. None of this, it might be appropriate to zone it mixed use, the areas you're talking about, but it's not zoned that way now.
What I'm saying is, if we change this to allow daycare centers, any mixed use, somebody could come in and say, I'm gonna put a childcare center here.
Well, they'd
Because
still have to zone it though,
Right. But it would
but
be
they,
allowed.
they could still make the argument, yeah, you're right, yeah. Yeah, Jen pulled up the zoning map and the only, if you can zoom in on Creekside Village right in here, the only mixed-use zoning that we have in the entire city is this area right here. And that's got townhouses on the back and then the two pieces of property, well, only one.
So you wouldn't be able to add that.
There's basically, the daycare center would be in the brown area on the north side of it.
So it's gonna be at the corner of that neighborhood entrance in 53.
Correct. I believe so. Yeah, I think it will. I think it'll take the whole site, the whole brown side up.
Yeah.
Okay,
back to my motion,
I think so.
okay? Do I need to restate it, or?
Yes, please.
Great, thanks.
Yes, restate.
So the motion is that for the daycare child learning centers, instead of making it instead of making it a permitted use, we make it a conditional use.
I second,
Under mixed use.
under mixed use.
Sorry.
And Jeff seconded.
I second.
Chuck made the motion. Jeff seconded.
All in favor?
Unless there's
Is
discussion,
there any
Jeff.
other discussion?
Do you want to discuss?
I wanna discuss.
Want to discuss?
Hold the vote
I
till.
apologize. Y'all just have to stick with me for a minute. I'm a slow-minded person. So this has nothing to do with actually approving a daycare center. This only has to do with not making a global use under mixed use, right?
Yeah, it's
Correct.
not
Okay.
it's not a site-specific
Okay,
decision.
okay.
It's just,
I'm ready
it's
for
saying
the
if a daycare center comes in, they're gonna have to come in and submit a plan.
Okay.
And what they plan to do and how they're gonna handle everything, and then that would have to be approved. This is
Now
just saying that
Now I understand.
this is just giving them permission to do that.
They'll have to come in and do more presentations and
Yeah, okay.
face the firing squad.
I'm ready for the vote.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
All in favor? Raise your hand. Any opposed?
7-0 unanimous. Okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda is ordinance 2024-05. going to turn this back over to Jerry White.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So we have a more recent version of this, and I'll get to that in just a second. But basically, the initiation of this was the city engineer. The city engineer believes that we need, he saw this on the agenda in Jefferson, and where we were doing a development agreement for a piece of property, and they were going to, city was going to require them to construct a larger water line than what was required. And it was already in the city of Jefferson's ordinance, and so they did a development agreement. But the city engineer saw that and said, hey, we need this in Houston. And so I said, yeah, okay, we'll put together an amendment. And so I put it together, and it was fairly simple. It just would say that the city can require you to oversize your improvements or your utilities. And if we do that, it has to be done by a development agreement approved by the city council, in so many words. So I sent it on to the city attorney, and the city attorney had comments on it, valid comments, some of which were, it sort of implied that you couldn't, that an applicant could say, well, no, I don't want to do it, and then where are you left in the process? And so I started working on some revisions to it today in response to what the city attorney had. And so I know you haven't received that or for very long, or haven't reviewed it, but initially the recommendation was, because the city engineer wants it, let's put it in the code. And then the devil's in the details. And I've tried to flesh out some of those details and how the city would handle something like this. Basically, if you oversize, say you require a larger water line, the city would have to pay for that. The difference between what it would cost the applicant, if they only need a 8-inch line to support their development, that's all they'd have to build. If the city wants a 12-inch water line because there's more development down the road, then that's something that we have to pay for ourselves. We cannot tell the applicant that they have to build something more than what's proportional to their development. So that's the gist of the conversation. So I don't know how you want to take it from there. I'll take questions.
So it seems pretty straightforward. My concern is, and I'll use your example, the developer says, I just need an 8-inch water line to my neighborhood, and the city council says, you know what, in 15 years, we're going to develop all the way down to the bridge there on 53, and we'll need a 12-inch line. Who determines if we're just paying for the material difference, or is the developer going to come back and just, rob us blind? How do we control that additional cost? I think the cost is fair for the city to eat, but in my simple mind, it's a material cost, not, scratch the 8-inch pipeline and now we got to pay for everything. I want to make sure we only have to pay for what we want changed and not the entire, I don't know what's in place to protect us.
That's the additional increment. So in the original that you received, it was not all that clear, but I think the work I did today makes it a little clearer. I'll point out on page 2. Let me read on paragraph B and C. It says, for any improvements or utilities for which oversizing is required, the applicant shall determine the estimated cost of improvements and utilities to serve the subdivision or land development and provide that to the city. So we're saying, you tell us how much it was going to cost you to provide that facility, whether it's water, sewer, whatever.
So in your example, to do the 8-inch line.
They would give us the cost of the 8-inch line, their engineer. Then we would do it in paragraph C. This says the city will determine the total estimated cost of oversized improvements necessary to serve that subdivision plus whatever else you're trying to serve in the vicinity. And we provide that cost estimate to the applicant. And that we tell them also what what methods we use to estimate those costs so that they can be, in fairness to the applicant, they can feel like, no, we didn't just come up with a number. Here's our formula or logic or method of how we came up with that number. And then paragraph D would say to your point, Ace, the difference between the two is what the city will pay.
And would you get estimates, like 3 estimates and say? here's
No,
what we
you'd have
got
one
in?
estimate.
Well,
You
okay,
wouldn't,
but
you wouldn't
you'd only
go
to
out,
one.
you wouldn't go out to a contractor to bid it. That
No,
would be a little bit too onerous
No, I
to
think,
do,
yeah,
but,
I don't remember.
but you'd have the applicant's information on how many
Information, okay.
linear feet it was, for example, and
Right.
how much they'd pay for an
How
8-inch.
much excavation?
And then you're able to, basically just upsize that and say if you had 300 feet of pipe for an 8-inch pipe, and 300 feet of a 12-inch pipe is this much more.
Okay.
So,
I guess the way that comes across is we're on the hook for the material difference, which is great. I understand it. Makes all the sense in the world. I just don't want to I don't want the city ending up paying, or for the developer to find a way for the city to pay for something that they should be paying for. Because to me, the labor costs, and I'm a simple person, and I may be wrong, but to me, the labor costs are going to be pretty fixed. You got to lay 100 feet of pipe, you lay 100 feet of pipe, whether it's 8 or 12 inch.
Exactly.
It's nothing. We're paying for the material difference, not the labor change. Because if he says, oh, it's another 50% increase in labor, I'm going to scratch my head, and you're going to have to tell me. Who's the honest broker here that makes sure that we don't get screwed over that way as a city?
yeah, it's a fair question to ask. I think it's covered in here, adequately in the sense that it all has to be written up in a development agreement approved by the city council. And so if anybody, city engineer or whoever's looking at it, city attorney, thinks we're getting cheated out of it, then we're not gonna approve the agreement. So there's that much safeguard in it, I think.
I'm the novice of the group when it comes to this, but it seems to me logically that if a developer comes with a plan and the property has an indication that there might be growth beyond it and the infrastructure will be, of what they're developing will have something beyond it, that should be part of the plan that gets approved. And if it requires a larger pipe, more electricity, so on, that should be part of the cost of developing that land. And each one would be taken on a case-by-case basis about if they need an extra pipe, and like you say, running an 8-inch pipe or a 12-inch pipe in the beginning is not gonna be that much difference in cost. But, so why wouldn't that just be part of the planning process? If that's what it is, that's what you gotta do.
Well, you're making a couple of good points. The first one has to do with, if you've got a good plan for water facilities, sewer, roads, then you already have figured out that you need a 12-inch line on that road, not an 8-inch line. And so your argument is kind of, well, we call for a 12-inch line, why don't you pay for it? They can object to that on the basis that it's not proportionate to, that they're being asked to, that it's an unlawful exaction, so to speak, or that they're having to pay for something that's not related directly to their development, and that's unfair. And if they took that to court, they're probably going to win something like that, in my non-legal
Even if the land that they're proposing, if it's up against the city line or something, when there's nothing beyond it that's in our control, why not? If there's planned growth for that, why not make them do it then?
Well,
Saves
but
everybody.
why would you pay for something that is gonna benefit somebody else?
Cost of doing
In the
business.
future.
No, it's
Here's an
not.
example.
So when I look at this map, I don't see a piece of property that isn't already spoken for large development. So if I were the city, I would say we need a 12-inch line that runs all the way down 53 to the end of the Rockland Homes property. And I would call, or whatever the thing is gonna be. And I would call every property owner there that's gotten their zoning that they wanted and say, we're fixing to have to spend, Jackson County Water and Sewer Authority just did this. They did a study, found out that they needed to raise their, tap fees from $5,000 to $10,000. Because they're fixing to spend $325 million to find water for this county, process that water, and put in new pipes to distribute it. And they were very honest with their customers. They said, we're gonna raise your rates 10% a year for the next 5 years. And they told the developers, whether you're already got something approved or not, tap fees are going up to this. And so, why shouldn't we do something similar? We know what it's gonna cost to get water to all these developments. Just tell the landowners and the developers,
So, okay, let me give you an example, a discrete example, the only one I know of in Houston where this has come into play. And that is Cambridge at Town Center, the townhouse project. Before they built that, there's a sewer line that runs through there. They wanted to just connect to it, but with the development that they would consume, with the capacity that they would need, plus other things upstream, the city engineer said, the sewer pipe we have there is not big enough. We need to upgrade it. Now, we need to upgrade it not only to serve you, but we're doing this because it needs to be a larger pipe to begin with to serve. For example, all of the Shannon Cell property that develops is north of there too. So the city agreed, well, basically, I'm trying to remember exactly what they did, but I'm not so sure that the city paid for it, but to upsize that line, I think the city charged that developer like $200,000 or something to put in to make it a larger pipe, and that they did the work. Okay, so I don't know if that's the best example.
that's not the best example, because what the city should have said to those people is, we don't have the infrastructure for the density you want. If you want that density, you're gonna have to pay for it. That's what the city should do. And a better example of what you're proposing here, Jerry,
Yeah.
was when, Ken Gary built Wildflower over here. The city made him put in a pump station to handle essentially all of the future development on the south side of 53, or the east, whatever that side is, this side. And told him that when development came, he would get his money back for doing that. So he paid the $500,000 to that pump station, and then when Creekside came, they made that developer pay well, it's a longer story, but the short story is, they made them pay $250,000 toward that pump station that Ken Gary put in. So, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, let's make the developers pay for what they're asking for. Or go to the county where they only get 2 houses per acre. But they come here and they get whatever it is, 6, 8, or 10 houses per acre of residences. So this is called equal exchange of commerce. If you're gonna get something from me, I want you to pay me for it.
Yeah, now, upsizing a lift station and then trying to get the future users to pay back the person who paid it is very difficult to do.
It worked once.
Yeah, the work once could work again.
Or just say, this is what our infrastructure costs, and this is what your water fee is gonna be, and this is what your wastewater treatment plant tap fee is gonna be, and just be honest with them. Just say.
Well, it really it goes back to principles of impact fee law and exactions and court cases on what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. And you just can't stick a cost that's not associated with that development on a developer and expect them to pay the full cost where they don't receive the full benefits of it.
But it's part of the development costs. I mean, if the infrastructure is not suitable for what they're proposing, then we can't do it. They don't do it. We don't approve it. If they're willing to, fix that or help fix it, and if they want to sue us over that, let them. I mean, to me, that's just.
I guess I'm getting a little confused, though. The upsizing is to accommodate future use. So the developer comes in there and says, I'm gonna build 100 homes here, and it only requires an 8-inch pipe. We look at this and say, you know what, within the next 10 years, we're gonna have enough annexation where we're gonna go down a mile, and we know that we're gonna need a 12-inch pipe. That's what you're looking for in the upsizing, right?
Yeah.
So, the developer's gonna take care of his development, because or it won't get approved. It's just the city trying to do the best to forecast growth and how to accommodate growth. Because if we screw it up, that means the city, and correct me if I'm wrong, we gotta come back and dig up that 8-inch line and eat the entire cost.
Exactly.
So I think the way you've written it makes sense, that it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it gives the city the ability to negotiate with the developer and say, hey, you know, it's 300 feet of 8-inch line. We want you to put 300 feet of 12-inch line. The material cost is $200,000. That's the difference, and that's what we'll give you a check for. But you got to eat the labor and the cost of the 8-inch pipe. We're just paying the difference. That's what this is saying, basically. Correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. I wouldn't start with paying them anything, but it's a negotiating point.
I see your point, the points that you're making. I just not real comfortable with that. I don't think our lawyer would be comfortable with it either.
One more point.
With, just telling the developer, we want 12-inch and you provide it.
You're not telling them that.
You pay the
You're
difference.
telling every developer that's gotten approval for something down whatever road you want, that this is what it's gonna cost to provide water to all the houses that y'all have asked for us to approve, and this is what it's gonna cost. Unless you know somebody's coming down 332 for Steadfast Farms and wants to build another 1,200 houses, and we've gotta get water down that road. I don't know. See, we're kind of blind here on what you're asking us for, because I'm looking at this sheet of paper and going, every bit of the city limits of Houston has got a PUD on it. It's super high density, where if they'd have gone to the county, they'd have only gotten 2 houses per acre. And they came here and got incredible densities, and now those developers are asking me as a property owner to subsidize their infrastructure, and I'm not understanding that. When these people haven't built one house on it yet, haven't put one piece of large equipment on it yet, we can say, we know what this is gonna cost. If Jackson County can get a study done that shows what they're gonna have to do, certainly to God, our engineer could put something together for this city. That's just my thoughts.
I kind of look at it almost, if we're paying for the upcharge, it's almost like buying an insurance policy. We're betting, the city is betting that the water, or there'll be more development further down the road. Okay? The 12-inch pipe will take care of it. If it never happens, there's nothing wrong with having excess capacity into that neighborhood. We made $200,000 investment in the difference in the material cost. Okay, it was a $200,000 investment, and nobody else was going to build. That's a chance we take. Versus we put in an 8-inch line, we approve 100 homes, and all of a sudden we've got the 8-inch line all the way back. We got to dig up and replace.
Yeah.
Is that oversimplifying it?
No, I think that's accurate. Let me also mention this on, every development will be paying, you know, they pay a sewer charge. They pay a water meter fee, which is a connection fee, which is more than, the simple cost of the meter itself and putting it in. I think a better word for it instead of a connection charge is a system development charge. At least that's what they called them in Oregon. It was a good name, I think, because basically you're collecting money, including the applicant who's paying for this, or let's say the occupant of the development will pay water and sewer fees, and those are set up to get enough money to pay for water treatment, protecting water lines, replacing water leaks and stuff like that. So we're getting some money from the developers. And the price that we're charging them is for some of the facility costs that we will experience over time, including, connecting to others, connecting others to that, and then they'll be paying the same fee. So there is some money coming in.
Well, that again that's the cost of business. If there's extra money that's required for doing what we're talking about, it's there. It seems like the meeting we had, our attorneys were the ones who were raising the flags of why we can't do something that
That's right.
I think is good for the city.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. So, does anybody in this room know what it costs the county every time a house is built in Jackson County for capital costs? I do, $17,000. Dr. Jeffrey Dorfman just did a study last year, 2023. So that's for road improvements, solid waste expansion for solid waste removal, EMS stations, recreation, and all that. The county only gets a $3,000 impact fee. Houston's is $2,800, something like that. We don't come anywhere near in this county or this city getting the amount of money for the capital cost that it costs for every house that's built in this county. Do you know what a house has to be valued at if you only have 0.7 children for every house in the school system? To break even on maintenance and operation budgets, $650,000. Every house that's in this county and in this city that's less than $650,000, our county and city and school system loses money on. For every 71 cents we collect in taxes, we're spending $1. So for an attorney to sit here and tell me that getting $10,000 for a tap fee for wastewater treatment plant is exorbitant money or whatever, you need to read the studies that have been done that show what it actually costs in this county and city to provide those services. So guess what happens when the developer says, oh, I'm so sorry, Houston, market conditions have changed, we're not going to build nary another house in the city. Oh, we borrowed $25 million to expand the wastewater treatment plant. What do you mean you're not going to pay us the tap fees? At some point, it's got to stop, Jerry. At some point, the developer has to pay for what it's costing us, because if I've yet to see a deer on my property load their 2 fawns up and take them to the school to get educated. I've yet to see a tree that I cut down, call EMS and say, oh my God, I got cut, I need to get a trip to the hospital. But every time we put a house on the property in this city or this county, we have to take that into consideration. So that's all I'm going to say.
As I read this, Jerry, it seems like I'm comfortable with it as I read through this, and I see 3 points where we check to protect the city. 1, I see that the engineer is involved up front. 2, the city attorney's got to approve it. And then 3, the city council's got to approve it, plus whatever input our committee has. So I'm comfortable with what's written here. I think the city is protected. I was just concerned about the cost, how it splits, but.
I'm going to add a 4th thing to that, Ace, and the thing that's been added to the new one that wasn't in the old one, and the big one is prior to approval and application for a preliminary plat. They've got to provide this information, so I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have my one other point. Is there adequate verbiage in here to cover in case it is less expensive to do a larger line?
Less expensive than what we
Than
thought
what
it
they
was
had
gonna
originally
be?
brought in, so you get a quote and it is less expensive, so like building a deck, it costs more for a 16-foot board than an 8 or a 10, because you need a straighter tree.
I don't know how you go back and try and recoup that increment.
Okay,
at
that
that
was
point.
just
But
my
you
one
can-
point.
If you can negotiate that to begin with and decide, these numbers are right, that's what, and we're comfortable paying it, then that, you should be okay in that regard, I would think.
So is there a motion to vote on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
Is there a
I'll second.
Is
Any
that
discussion?
the revised version?
Yes.
Okay, motion by Ace. Who?
Chuck.
Ace, Chuck, okay.
Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed?
Five to two? 5-2, and Scott and Tom opposed. Okay.
I have a question, Jerry.
Yeah.
Well, you move on to the next.
Okay, the next item is just a discussion item, no action is required. That's the 5-year.
Yeah, planning commissioners, put this on the agenda because over the next year, the city will need to be updating its comprehensive plan, a 5-year update, which is a fairly major effort that involves appointment of a steering committee, public hearings, and some sort of explicit effort to engage the public in conversation about the plan. And so none of that, we have not written a participation plan or anything like that, but you being the planning commission, I thought it was appropriate for you to know that you'll have a recommendation outright on any sort of comprehensive plan that gets proposed. You'll be able to vote on that and hold a public hearing, but also there will be some sort of a committee to spearhead or shepherd the project. And I suspect, but I don't know exactly yet, I haven't had conversations with the city council or the mayor about exactly how they want to set up that committee and so forth, but I think some of that's in the works. I don't know if, Madam Chairman, if you want to recognize anyone from the city council, the mayor, if you want to speak up about what you have in mind for how to handle that steering committee. I think that was the main reason why I wanted to put it on there, is because I think at minimum, even though the members of the planning commission will get to have a say-so and recommend approval or disapproval of a plan, the nitty-gritty work that needs to be done, there's more discussion at the time of the committee, and so I would think that at least a couple of members of this commission should be on that committee. And I was going to go a little further with it to tell you what's in the comprehensive plan, but by now you guys are a little more acclimated to what's in there. It's covering land use, transportation, economic development, community facilities, environment, et cetera. And so, I don't know if you want to, Mayor, would it be appropriate? Would you be willing to talk to us a little bit about what you had in mind for the committee, if you have thought about that? Yeah, that'd be great.
As Dr. White stated, we haven't really talked about the steering committee team yet for the comprehensive plan. We briefly discussed it today with regards to how many members. I definitely want 2 from this team. I'm going to take several from the public and several from the business owners, and several business owners to be on the steering committee. And I believe we agreed, Dr. White, correct me if I'm wrong, 12 members on the steering committee, and of course include public hearing and comments from them. And really, that's all I have at this point. Jerry, did you have any more than that, do you think?
The only thing I would add is that the rules talk about the city. Thanks. The rules talk about the city council being actively involved in the process, and it doesn't mean everybody, but it's probably appropriate to have 2 members of the city council be on the
Yeah,
committee
sorry.
as
I
well.
do have the list. It's in my office. It is 2 from the council. I have 2 selected from this team. And business owners, so I have come up with 12, including 2 from council, 2 from here, and, business owners. Other than that, we're not quite there yet. The same's gonna be true for, if you don't mind me stating it now, the same, is true for the Transportation Committee study that we're gonna start in, I believe it's April 2025. Same thing, probably 12 people, 2 from here, 2 from council, business owners, and, I'm recommending some, individuals from the community.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. It's really all I have. We have to decide to, when will we have a hearing? We have to do an initial public hearing, which would be before the Planning Commission as well as the City Council. So there'd be 2 initial hearings before we even get started. And we're gonna need to do that by, I'm saying by the end of the year. So, October, November, probably is when we'll have, probably November. But, unless you have questions, I just wanted to let you know, give you a little primer about the fact that this is gonna be work coming up, and, we hope that you'll be engaged in it, whether you're appointed to the committee or not. We still want your input, and you'll have input independent of the committee, because the Planning Commission gets to vote on the plan itself. So, if you have questions about it, it'd be appropriate at this time for me to try and answer those.
Yeah. I don't have a question, but I do, I have not read the whole plan, but I did focus on the water supply needs and so on, because I have some expertise in that. And, it seems to me that the city and the county is woefully, unprepared for what's coming for water supply and distribution. So, I would recommend that they consider as part of the plan to, join the metropolitan, the North Georgia, Water Planning District, which is out of Atlanta and all the surrounding counties of Atlanta. But that's probably for discussion later on, but.
Okay, I know Councilmember Brown has talked about water, and he probably knows more than anyone on the council, what our possibilities are. I mean, we're looking for, intergovernmental agreements with water providers. We're also doing well exploration on properties. And, so it's very much an issue, that we know will have to be addressed. Now, the issue of a metro, being part of the Metro North Georgia Water Planning District, that in itself, if you join that, it comes with a whole host of, mandates.
Yes, it does.
Unfunded mandates.
Yes, it
So
does.
that's not an easy one to
But
just swallow.
that's part of the benefit of the plan, because the mandates are for what's good for the community. So what's good for the community and what's good for the water supply. It also gives you a lot of contacts within the planning district of other water companies that have gone through this kind of, growth, and gives you a lot of insight into, how to deal with it and what needs to be done.
Well, the next item is other business, and there's none scheduled, so I make a motion.
I just wanted to ask about, as I was reading the subdivision and land development ordinance, I was curious to know if in putting the infrastructure in for a large development or a land development, the preliminary plans, and then we've got, final plat and all this. So do we, at the end of the process, does the city get the as-built for the infrastructure that was actually used and where that infrastructure is? I know from experience using the utility locators, they're not always right on target. And is that something we need, or?
We
I know
need it,
inspectors
we need
go
it, and we
out
get it. Yeah.
We
the-
do get as-built,
For everything that's publicly dedicated.
okay.
So water and sewer lines, we
As
even
it
get them
was-
done for stormwater,
Right,
for the, at least the part that's within our right-of-ways.
yes.
We don't
Okay.
have, and we probably get, as-bills for stormwater ponds and so forth, even though we're not, responsible for maintaining those.
Okay, yeah, that was my question, just so that we know that. Thank you.
Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay. Vote to adjourn.
Okay, thanks. See you next month.
Thanks, Jerry.
See you the month after next.
Yeah.
I will be gone next month.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Just so you know. Well, it probably would be, I don't know about each other, but if I don't, I've got the PowerPoint presentations that the county has used. There's incredible PowerPoint information in those, and I'd be happy to send them to everybody.
No, that sounds like it's right there in your
Yeah, well, it would.
red box, yeah.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something?
Hopefully, they'll make it right.
That was it.